Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Alexis Edwards, and today we're doing the kickoff of our energy and relationships series, so part 1. Let's go ahead and I'll probably start in about 3 or 4 minutes. We're going to wait for a few people to hop on. For your replay viewers, thank you for your patience, and you can skip ahead if you'd like a couple of minutes. Alright, let's see. Hey! Oh, and I can see my comments today. And I'm in the right group, right? I'm in the Healing Alchemists. I think we're good. All right, so we're just going to get started. I'm not really sure why it's not letting me invite more people. Let's see. Oh, it's not. I am live. I'm just trying to make sure that everything's going the way it's supposed to. It normally lets me invite people, like to remind people that we're coming on. Let's see. All right, so we can go ahead and get started. I was gonna do some cards, but since you're the only one on here, I'm not sure if you want some from me. Do you want some? This is my mama, I can say that, right? Did you register for the course? There's a link in the group to join the VIP list, and if you did that, then it sent you an email reminder. If not, I don't think in the group it does it. All right, that's okay. All right, so what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to set an intention for our... Hey, Jane. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, they'll catch the replay. All right, so what I'm going to do to start is I want to set the intention for this with some cards. We're going to pick one card for our whole group. So everybody who's watching this, it's going to relate to, hey Jane, relate to what we're talking about. Let's see how we can be supported in learning about energy and relationships. Oh, this is beautiful. So we got the transformation card in the masculine. And I'll read it. It says, transformation. I hold vibrations of shift and transformation. My purpose is to assist your personal transformation and the creation of a new paradigm on Earth. I invite you to engage with the process of transformation and be inspired by the creative role available to you. veils of separation that have shrouded the earth for thousands of years are lifting. Now beyond all doubt, know beyond all doubt that we are not alone in the universe. Ask for assistance with your transformation. Transformation offers you a pathway of expansion into peace, beauty, joy, and abundance. Hi, Kellen. Thanks for coming on. All right. So we were just picking a card to kind of set the energy for what we're doing. I'm really excited about talking about this. This is a topic that's really important to me. I feel like talking about energy is something that's definitely on the woo-woo, the weird kind of spectrum, but energy's everywhere. Energy is everything. We're energy, everything around us is. It was something that I was always quite interested in as a kid. I loved science, and I loved the fact that, just for example, the principal thing about energy is it can neither be created nor destroyed, only transmuted. And that, I think, really having that sink in for me was something that's carried me to now, that it's something that I utilize. It's a thought and a belief system that's really strong for me in terms of, if it can't be created, or destroyed, only, transmuted, it's how can you transmute that? And it also takes away the idea of there being anything bad or good. It's just a matter of what is the experience, and how can we transfer that? So for me, energy is simply data. It's information. People talk about it in a lot of different ways, but it literally is just what holds the data. It's the information of everything. So understanding that is really important, because it's in our lives every day. So for this 3-day talk, I wanted to talk about specifically how it relates to our romantic relationships. In the future, we'll talk about, in the future, we'll talk about how it can apply to other things. And, you can take this. Some of these things are going to be useful for any sort of interaction that you have with people. But there'll be a heavy focus on love relationships, on our primary partnership, whether we're married or we have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whomever. One of the ways that energy manifests itself is through emotions. And so emotions give us a lot of data. It's probably the primary way that most of us understand and perceive data from our relationship. How do we feel in it, right? And so what I wanted to kind of emphasize is talking, as we talk a little bit more about this, how picking up, noting how we feel in situations. So, we know how we feel sometimes, right? And we've labeled sensations with emotions. Certain things like crying means you're sad, right? So things of that nature, we have a very 1-to-1 ratio within our cultures. Each culture is definitely different, but I think as a whole, we have set ideas of what things look like. I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why my clients and patients so often will apologize when they cry, because crying equates sadness, and it isn't. Crying is so much more. But without really thinking too deeply about these things, we just perceive what we perceive. So if somebody raises their voice, for example, it means they're angry at us automatically, right? There's these 1-to-1 correlations that we have, and kind of taking a step back and learning what those are. And I'll give you all some prompts to kind of do that over the next 3 days, but really seeing how we can make changes, because oftentimes what's happening in relationships is about us. It's about how we're perceiving the other person, for a variety of reasons. It's sometimes how that person feels to us. How do we feel in the room with them? What are they making us feel? Are we, happy? Are we sad? Are we frightened? Or we want to get away? Does it feel uncomfortable? Does it feel good? That's going to be, our first data. How are they behaving? What besides just what they're saying? And all of this stuff is occurring in just nanoseconds of interactions with people. And, we also have preconceived ideas of the way interactions will go. Sometimes that's based on our parents, what we see, how our parents interact. Sometimes that's TV and media. Sometimes it's our friends. Sometimes it's just a template that we have from society, the way things are supposed to go. One of the old school things where it was the good wife was supposed to have a nice, clean and tidy house, and if your husband came home and it was a mess, it was a big deal, or if the children weren't quiet. And this is like old stuff. This is 1950s and pre that kind of ideas, but sometimes we still hold those patterns within our society, and so we don't realize it, but these things are kind of within us popping up, and we're not even consciously aware of it. So starting to become a little bit more aware of why and how you're reacting the way that you are is really important. Understanding that it isn't always just, it's about us. A lot of interactions are about us. It's not really about the other person so much. It isn't. And the other thing that's really, really huge, especially when people are trying to make changes, is we react the way, hey Wendy, we react the way we normally would in that given situation. So that's a big one, because when we're in, and I'm going to talk a little bit about when things aren't great in our relationship, because when they're good, most of us don't really think about what we need to do differently. And we'll get to that probably later in the 3 days, but we want to improve whatever difficulties we have, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit. Oftentimes when there's behaviors we don't like, or ways people treat us, or things that they do, and we're talking about changing it, we're desiring for change, oftentimes a person can change their behavior and we don't create allowance for that change, because the next time we have an interaction, we're behaving expecting that same behavior to occur. Now, this doesn't happen every single time with every single person, with every single relationship, but I would say a good 9 times out of 10, we're going to be reacting prior to really even receiving what was said, or kind of assessing the energetic situation. Like, what are they saying? How are they acting? How am I feeling? Right? The things that we talked about. And we don't do that. We just react. And that's the thing about it is there's this quickness in our culture and in our society that doesn't allow us to think, and there's that saying, think before you speak. And it's really about allowing, in a moment, like, we don't need to be so quick and so thoughtless in our life. Coming into our body, coming into ourself allows us to be more conscious and more aware and more connected to the way we're moving about in the world. This allows us to assess. Yeah, we do need to, Kathy's saying we need to change our habits, our reactions and behaviors. Yeah, and the allowance of that, because one of the habits and behaviors that we need to change when someone else is changing is simply accepting, is receiving that, oh, hang on a second, that was different. And then also, not just was that different, giving feedback that you noticed those changes. I think that that's really, really important. That's something that I'll definitely say, like, within my own relationship with my marriage, is that that's really important. When my husband has made efforts and done things to change things, or to do things more in a way that would fill me up and make me happy, it's important to give that feedback. And I think most people, regardless of your love language, which we'll get to in a second, we want feedback. We want to know that we're doing a good job. Life is about connection. It's about approval in a way. And I'm not saying that we should seek approval, but within our love relationship, it's one of those things where feeling good and feeling like we're doing a good job within that, and our responsibility that we accepted in being with this person, that we're meeting that, especially when we're in a place where a good, positive, healthy relationship. These are the things that we want, that a lot of people think about and have within their thought process, and it should be there. We should be thoughtful of how we're coming across, and I think oftentimes, if we're in a relationship that is harmful, that is hurtful, that is continually, that there aren't changes, that's another situation. We're talking about situations where moderate, we do have that intangible spark with someone, somebody that we enjoy their company and like them as a human being. This is what we're talking about, those kinds of things where, our humanness gets the better of us often. And it's taking a step back and allowing us to notice our humanness and do something about it, and allow another person's humanness too. I know this is a little bit off topic, but it's something that's so important. I said it to somebody recently, and it's really what it's about. It's understanding that, you know, we have this fairy tale idea of relationships and love and marriage and, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever. And really, you know, the fairy tale is that we're able to connect, really. And I just feel really strongly that it's important to have awareness of ourselves, awareness of what we're putting out, and responsibility for our energy. That's something that a lot of people talk about, and it's really important, responsibility for our energy. And so what that means is understanding what we put out, you know, when something upsets us. And of course, we're allowed to experience all the range of emotions. I'm not somebody who thinks there's any such thing as a bad emotion. I think it's important to perceive something, understand it, feel however you feel, but then also not stay stuck in something, right? So that was a big part of it. Does anybody have questions? I kind of went off into like a little bit tangent, but I think that that's important. I think it's important to understand what the things that are important to us, to give feedback to the other person, to be energetically responsible. So with that, what I wanted to also say is that, for example, if something angers us and we spend the whole day with everyone around us being angry, like let's say we're at work and something happens and it's upsetting and frustrating, and there's movement of energy, because that's what happens with emotions. Emotions set in motion, things start to change. Each emotion has a certain energetic frequency in which it vibrates in our body. So we're going to carry that. We have to learn ways to change that. How do you disperse that? Going outside, grounding, putting your feet in the grass. There's lots of different ways to do these things, but changing. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Jane asked a really great question. She's saying, how do we clear a reaction which clearly stems from a prior relationship? So tomorrow I'm going to talk about loops, and how we loop out within our own relationship, but how we loop out from previous relationships. So we'll go into more depth about that tomorrow. But today what I will say is that just about any experience leaves a mark. Okay, just like when you're walking on the sand, you leave footprints, right? When we have a relationship with previously, because a lot of us date and are married more than once and have different sorts of things, and sometimes we don't, but for people who do, those are prints within our field, and there's a lot of different ways to clear that. But one of the things is there's a resonance, meaning there's a like attracting like it's two little magnets calling each other. So if there's this resonance of I'm worthless, so my partner treats me like crap, because for whatever, either that's an internal feeling, or we were in a relationship where we were taught that, where someone was not kind to us and treat us in that way, we then go into another relationship, and what's going to end up happening is it sometimes can alter how the other person's behaving towards us, because there's a resonance of behavior, there's a resonance pattern that wants its matching magnet. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please ask me. So there are ways, and some of the work that I do does that. So one-to-one sessions, you can clear things sometimes when they're really complicated, when it's not just, you know, clearing a pattern, and it's a little bit deeper, doing things like cord work and things like that. And I'll talk about cords on day 3. Today I just wanted to give like a basic overview. Does that kind of help answer your question? We'll talk about it more, so remind me tomorrow, because we'll talk about ways to actually clear. And I'm thinking I may do a healing at the end of it, a clearing, to clear any connections from prior relationships, and that'll be kind of cool. Does anybody else have any questions? So the other thing that I wanted to mention as well, in starting to assess our own energy and having awareness of what we feel like and what other people feel like. Yeah, you receive what you put out. Exactly. Yep. Yep. So expansion and constriction. And I feel like in a certain way, that's what it all boils down to. So when we're starting to learn how to understand what we're sensing besides just emotions, because it is a learned skill. I mean, nobody gives us a handbook on relationships. We don't get handed how to, take care of something. It's quite interesting because, we work so hard at so many things in life throughout the time. Like when we're at work, we work really hard to achieve our goals and to meet all these things. And then oftentimes with our relationships, we sort of just go through the motions, and life can get the better of us and our humanness can get the better of us. And because for lack of a better word, but having active energetic flow within a relationship and movement and working towards something and improving it is really important. But with expansion and constriction, it's how do I feel? Do I feel like this expands me? Is my interaction right now expanding how I feel? Or do I feel constricted? And those are, I think it kind of boils down to that. I mean, there's more to it for sure, but it's really what it is. Like with anything, do I feel this yummy expansion or do I feel constricted? And I think that articulating that once we start understanding it, even from ourselves, when we behave a certain way, like how I'm responding, does this make me feel constricted? Perhaps I don't want to do that. And then how is my partner perceiving that? Because, I've talked a lot about us and our responsibility, and certainly, encouraging. The first thing when you're changing things, I would say for sure is to acknowledge that. That's the number one thing. I think acknowledgement is incredibly important. Saying thank you for bringing me coffee. Those simple things. Like, I think gratitude is something that's vastly lacking in relationships. We get so used to these people, these core people in our lives that just function in our lives, and they help us so greatly to function in our life, and there isn't enough gratitude and or saying and putting the gratitude out there, and that's a really expansive feeling. Gratitude feels good giving it, and gratitude feels good receiving it. So that's something I know. These things seem like, how is that related to energy? But it is. It all is energy. It's frequency. It's how do we change that? How do we increase our frequency? How do we feel that expansive yumminess? And sometimes it's a matter, when we're really new to it and really trying to work at something and being aware of our behaviors and being aware of the way in which, that energetic responsibility that I talked about. Keep a notebook, keep a journal, write different ways that, things that you felt. And I think that that's really a way to start changing behaviors, and definitely acknowledging when someone else is changing their behaviors too for us. That's important, I think. I think that's everything that I wanted to go through today, unless anybody had any questions. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about loops. I'm going to be sending a email this afternoon, evening-ish. That'll be another journaling activity. So if you're on the VIP list, you will receive it. So if you'd like to be, there's a link in the group, and I can actually throw it in the comments here as well. And all that means is you get an email that says, hey, thanks for coming. Here's our prompting and just a synopsis of what we discussed today. All right. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow. I'll be publishing the time for tomorrow later today. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks for coming on. Bye.